It's a privilege to introduce my good friend Brett Hurt, an accomplished entrepreneur and the founder of both Data World and Bazaar Voice. Brett is a true visionary whose work has transformed how we understand data and customer insights, driving innovation across industries. He lives by a powerful mantra: how you do anything is how you do everything. At least I think he does that. The mindset is woven into everything he does, from his leadership style to his focus on integrity, excellence, and impact. At Data World, Brett is redefining how people collaborate data, promoting openness and transparency. And with Bazaar Voice, he helped revolutionize how businesses engage with customer feedback, showing his gift for building companies that leave a lasting mark. He has been building companies since he's been, I'll go with 10, but it's probably really 13. We're excited to welcome Brett to Gathering of Titans. His entrepreneurial journey, purpose-driven approach, and commitment to doing things the right way will no doubt challenge and inspire us all. Please join me with the GOT. Welcome.
Let me just first start out with what an honor it is to be here. What a day. I mean, this has been an absolutely beautiful day. I had an amazing connection with Ellen after her talk. We spent 45 minutes out there talking. I may end up helping her out on something that she's trying to achieve. Barrett, your talk absolutely touched my heart. I had a very similar experience to you, and the first soul I encountered was my mom. And it was the synchronicity between our stories couldn't be more profound. And I just appreciate you sharing your heart like that. That was really, really beautiful. I was moved to tears. So thank you for that. And Cheryl's talk, wow, it's absolutely fantastic. Where's Cheryl? Cheryl, thank you for that. Yeah, I was one of the people that raised my hands. I was definitely seeing things in that meditation that I want to remember. And you brought that out in us. So I'm talking about a subject that I'm deeply, deeply passionate about. And I don't actually know where this subject is going to take me. I'll just say that. Like, I ended up staying, if you guys are wondering where I was at last night, I was here for the whole, honoring of Rick. That was fantastic. Really beautiful. I wish I had met him. And then I went back and I thought, I could just riff and just talk about this, but I've learned so much since I first gave this talk, and this is new. This is really new for me. I've been on a deep dive with this topic because I think it really, really matters. I think we're on the cusp of manifesting as humanity this world of abundance, and I can see it over the horizon, and I'm really, really excited about it. I think that it's kind of the ultimate manifestation of all the technologies that we've been building, and everything that we build in technology, as Steve Jobs says, it's like layers in the sand that people are building on top of. And so we're in that moment right now, and it's really got my head spinning about what is the nature of humanity. What makes us special at all? Do we have a soul? Is there God? Are we here for divine purpose? It's really got my head spinning on that. And I'm racing towards this topic. The first time I spoke about this, actually, Sam Goodner was there. It was the very first time I ever spoke about it. It was a YPO Gold event. We're both in YPO together. And I was bringing a gentleman to Austin. I spent the week with him, called Mark Gober. He's written 7 books. I'm gonna reference one of his books. And then the next time I gave the talk was on Necker Island, where I was also greeted by Richard Branson. He comes up racing to the boat, and you're like, "Who is that?" And you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's Richard Branson!" Like, he's got no shirt on, etc. Like, just can't wait to start playing pickleball with people. John Mackey, for the record, I flew in with John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods, to that. Did beat him in pickleball every time, and he was not happy about it. Let me just say, because he actually talked about that. in his talk. And John is just a relentless competitor. He was not going to let Richard have the win on his own island, 74 acres. But I love John. I had so many deep conversations with John on the flight in, on the flight out about spirituality. I found out that he has a lot of the same knowings, beliefs that I have in this age. And so this is really a topic that's pulling me, and I'm racing towards it, but I can't tell you what that's going to mean. Probably what it's going to mean is eventually a seventh business. I've started 6 companies as an entrepreneur, but I don't know how that's going to kind of crystallize. And I'm in the process of figuring that out. And I really need your help in that journey. Like, I really want to learn from you. I want to hear what books you would recommend. I'm going to tell you the books that I've been reading. I've been reading a ton. I'm going to give you a fraction of them that I think are the best of. And so, but I really want you to tell me what to read. And I hope that what I hope to do in you is inspire a curiosity about this subject, because I really think raising our collective consciousness as humanity really matters right now. So we have 3 accelerating forces with AI, quantum computing, and robotics. And the first part of this presentation, I'm going to step through that. And the second part of this presentation, I'm going to talk about what I'm reading and why I think what I'm reading matters, at least to me. Let me start out with where it started. So I was super, super lucky to be born in Austin. I was born in 1972. I'm 53 years old. I was born to a very entrepreneurial mom and dad. My mom went to UT Austin, was top of her class, double major in 3 years, and dropped out after getting the dream job dropped out not from UT, but from her dream job after a year to start a business with my dad, because she wanted to be an extremely present mom. And she was all about me and my sister. And I have a younger sister I'm super close to, Brandy, who is 8 years younger than me. And it all started with her buying me Pong when I was 4 years old. That was Atari. You could only play Pong. There was no cartridge. It was just one encapsulated system. And I was just completely infatuated with it. That's all I wanted to do, is play and really learn how it worked. So I was like trying to take it apart and figure out how all the electronics worked inside of it. And she thought, that's kind of weird. That's not really what people in Texas are talking about at that time. So when I turned 7, she read an article about the fact that Atari had come out with the basic programming cartridge that you could plug into an Atari 2600. This is 1979. She kept this computer for me. It's the only one she kept for me. I've got it in a glass box at home. And she learned how to program with me. And it was such bad feng shui that you had a keyboard kind of thing that plugged into the joystick ports. You keep not in your head, so you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Did you have one of these? Okay, that's awesome. I meet very few people that actually knew Atari did this. And there's no way to save the programs. Like, my dad one time tripped over the cord, and it was after 2 weeks of programming. But she learned how to program with me. But the biggest gift she gave me of all is that once she saw clearly that that was my passion, and I literally would spend over 40 hours a week doing that. School for me was like a distraction. I did what I needed to do, make decent grades, and then just go home and just program into the night. She got everybody to get out of my way. And this was not easy. This is like superhuman strength, because think about the time I'm talking about. This is a time where it's not clear technology that computers are going to really go anywhere career-wise. Nobody's thinking that way. I'm not playing things like football and other things that people are supposed to be doing growing up in Texas. And my extended family is literally telling my mom, sometimes where I can hear, like, "You're ruining him. All he does is talk about computers. He does nothing else." But she knew I'd found my passion, and she knew that because she was married to my dad. And my dad was the same way, but he would always create physical items that you could touch and feel. He invented the first halogen fishing light, sold those all over the world. He was like a celebrity in fishing circles. But I was creating virtual things. And I created one of the first bulletin board systems when I was 10 years old. That became the most popular BBS in Austin. I created, I helped someone out with their BBS when I was about 15. That actually got me a full-time job later on, Karma. When I was at UT, he called me up, said, "Hey, I'm working for this company, Anderson Consulting, and we need an intern. Do you still program?" I'd helped him set up his own BBS when I was 15. I was like, "That's all I do," and he said, "You're hired." And I worked full time in my junior and senior year. And people are like, "How on earth did you get this job?" Now the company's called Accenture, but that then really set up my career well to go to Deloitte. That led to me getting an MBA at Wharton. The reason I got into Wharton, I don't think was because of my grades. It was because I did well on the GMAT and I had a really weird background. I was able to talk about the fact that as a freshman at UT, I started an internet game that became one of the most popular games on the internet. Supposedly it was the most popular by the time I was a junior. And it was called Renegade Outpost. It's based on D&D and had players from all over the world. It's really, really amazing. People got married in real life as a result of meeting the game. There was a conference that built around it. They flew me out. I didn't have any money and, presented to people. And so anyways, this was the right setup for a career of right passion, right time. And, now I stand before you as someone who's started 5 companies and had a lot of great success with it. And I feel very honored, but it all started here. And what I learned from my mom is that when your child finds their passion, let them do that completely without prejudice and give them everything you can give them from a love perspective and from a resource perspective. She just gave me everything on that front. And just think about that for a second. I mean, how manic we can be as parents. Like, oh, everybody's got to learn Mandarin right now. Everybody's got to do this right now, or whatever it is. I had a friend who was raising his son, and when his son was really getting into programming, he was, I think, 13 years old. He said, I've stopped him from doing this because he had read The World is Flat by Thomas Friedman. And he was like, there's not going to be any programming jobs in the US. It's all going to India. There's nothing's going to be left. And I'm like, you are an idiot. I was like, I'm so glad you're not my mom. Like, honestly, you know that that's his passion. Like, let him do it without prejudice. And he was so wrong. I mean, programmers are so incredibly valuable. So anyways, that's the setup for growing up. I also grew up reading a lot of science fiction. I grew up reading Isaac Asimov. Isaac Asimov is the person who came up with the term robotics. He came up with that term. I think it was like 1920 is when he came up with that term. And he's incredibly prolific mind and really envisioned the future that we're now in. So let's talk about that future. ChatGPT. Anybody want to guess when it launched? November 30th, 2022. November 30th, 2022. What date is it today? April 24th, 2025. Okay. We are using the worst models that we will ever use in human history right now. And I've never seen a technology achieve this type of pace ever. This has been my obsessive study from the time I was very, very young. And this was the fastest ever application to reach 100 million users. Today, latest report was, I think, in February. It has something like 400 million daily active users now. It's got many billions of revenue, and it's stunning what's happening with ChatGPT. And hopefully, how many people in here well, just raise your hand if you have a paid subscription of ChatGPT. Okay, that's an unusually high ratio of people, which is great. Like that actually says like Randy's in the right group. So fantastic. Like that was a lot of hands going up. When I asked that same question on Necker Island, it was about 60% of the hands. I think that was like 90%, which is pretty awesome. So you should be using these models multiple times a day. You should not be afraid of using these models. It is, since the dawn of humanity, we have always manifested a better world through technology since the discovery of fire. You know, we're cooking food to ultimately get our brains to become bigger and really manifest all the things that we've seen since. Technology can also be used for bad. Like since the discovery of fire, you could set people on fire, you could burn houses down. There were things like that that happened. I mean, we've got all types of atrocities in history, but for the most part, we used it for good, like the 99+% part. What happened 4 months after the launch of ChatGPT? 4 months after. Like, just think about that. No, this March 22nd, 2023. 4 months after, shut it all down. Elon Musk signs up on this, says we need to have a 6-month pause where nobody develops a model more powerful than GPT-4. People are really freaking out. They'd seen The Matrix, they had seen, Terminator, they had seen all these things. It's like this is talking to me like it's a human. It probably can pass the Turing test now. Like, what is going on here? And so 33,700 people of the most foremost AI researchers, not all of them, but many of the most foremost AI researchers said, stop. Like, we need to get our bearings here. So the fear was manifested. What's happened now with Sam Altman? So President Trump is coming to office for the second time. He announces pretty soon after coming in office in February. I know it's hard to keep up with the number of announcements, but this is a big one. This is February, and he announces $500 billion in funding for something called Stargate. Okay, can't make this up. It's like very science fiction. Lots of movies, books have been named Stargate. And $500 billion in funding is to go to, and it's a collaboration between Mayoshi Son of SoftBank, Larry Ellison, Sam Altman, and I picked this photo because think about it, if you're this guy, like you've launched this on November 30th of 2022. Now you're up there with the President of the United States, and $500 billion in funding is to go towards us being the first country to create AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. Another way to look at this is we are in a manic race versus China to be the first country to create sentience. Okay, just let that sit in for a second. Why? Why is it a manic race? Because if we don't create sentience, then we lose, right? The first country to create sentience will rule the world. Now, where sentience is self-awareness, consciousness, like our feeling, like what we did in that meditation we just had, the experience that Barrett had, seeing his mom. That's a very real experience. I, by the way, very deeply believe in God. I very deeply believe we have a soul. I think consciousness is fundamental, and I'll get into that. But the irony is, this race, nobody actually knows what consciousness is. It's like the underwear gnomes episode on South Park, if you remember that episode, where Kyle, all of his underwear is getting stolen, and he's like, "What the heck's going on?" So he stays up all night, and these underwear gnomes come into his bedroom, and they take all of his underwear, and he's like peering at them, and he kind of sneaks and follows them through the caves underground, and he's like, "What's going on here?" Because he sees all these underwear gnomes all going through underground caves with piling all the underwear together. And they fire up a PowerPoint presentation. And they're like, "Step 1, collect all underwear." They're like, "Step 2." And the music stops and they all look around. They're like, "Step 3, make profits." Right? Well, we're at that right now. Like, we don't even know what consciousness is. We do not know what consciousness is. Ellen and I had a long conversation with about this. Okay, Ellen, like the way she answered my question, it's much more nuanced. She said, look, I don't want to use the word soul because I'm a scientist. Okay, but she actually believes consciousness is fundamental, which I also believe. Um, and what does it mean to believe consciousness is fundamental? Okay, so um, let me ask you this question. So the known age of the universe that we believe is 13.8 billion years. What you're meant to believe is that over 13.8 billion years, there have been, there was no entropy at the beginning, and then a big bang occurred, and entropy's been increasing ever since. And so matter has been spreading outward, and through lots of random collisions, it created chemistry. And then through lots of other collisions, it created simple life. And then through lots of other combinations, it created complex life. And then out of that popped consciousness. How many people believe that's the case? Not one? Okay, so this is, I mean, this is what you're taught in school. Like what I just said is that is the consensus of what consciousness is. Um, so if you believe in that, you're what is called a materialist, which is there's nothing special about us at all. It is just we are just we just manifested out of that. Our consciousness, there's nothing special about it. We'll ultimately decode it. Machines will have it. That's you have to accept that belief if you're a materialist. If you believe consciousness is fundamental, it gets a little bit different because it means that if you believe consciousness is fundamental, that matter somehow is derivative of that, which means that what we're experiencing right now is a version of consciousness. And there's lots of different ways you can go in that. I'm going to take you through some books. But I just want to put this in perspective. Okay, this 500 billion in this race to create sentience, which again, we do not understand, that is more money, inflation adjusted, than we spent against Russia to win the space race. That's around $260 billion inflation adjusted. Okay. And we're like, if we don't win that race, Russia's got control of space, we're screwed. It's way more inflation adjusted than we spent on the Manhattan Project to win World War II versus Germany versus the Nazis. We're like, if the Nazis win, we're screwed. We are in that race right now. Nobody is talking about how much money this is. I think it's because of the perversion of what we've all been through with COVID, where it's like, trillions of dollars now doesn't sound like a lot of money. But this is way more money than we spent on the space race and the Manhattan Project. Actually, if you put them together, it's more money, inflation adjusted, than we spent on both. So what happened the day before Stargate was announced? The day before, I can't script this stuff, right? February 21st, Stargate's announced, President Trump up there, et cetera. The day before, DeepSeek, a Chinese company, open sources a model called R1, DeepSeek R1, which is as powerful and way more powerful than GPT-4. Remember the moratorium call? Oh yeah, that's so yesterday. That's a long time ago, right? It's not that long ago. So this is a seminal moment. This actually wiped away, once people found out how powerful this model was, it took around 3 to 4 days after the announcement of Stargate. The next week, NVIDIA led the decline, losing $1 trillion of market value. NVIDIA lost 600 billion that week, much more than Stargate, I guess. And we're actually in a pretty precarious spot with technology right now and where valuations are. I actually personally, I sold all my tech stocks 3.5 months ago because I was not convinced this movie was going to end well, and I'm going to wait until prices are much lower. But we'll see. We'll see where that nets out. But DeepSeek R1, the race is on, right? And this is a huge, huge milestone. And the other company really competing, they just came out with this, is Meta. Like, who would have known? Meta, the creator of Facebook and owners of Instagram. Meta is like open sourcing their models. And Llama 4, this was just announced. I think it was early April. These are open source, like DeepSeek. Yes.
When was it announced?
What's that? Yeah, about like early April, right? This is 4, Llama 4. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was like early April. And these are super, super powerful models. And Zuckerberg, they have so much money. It's a cash printing advertising machine that really is very AI powered. He's like, look, I'm just going to keep putting this stuff out for free, and they've got just insane amount of NVIDIA infrastructure, insane amount to put this out. Okay, where is this going right now? Right now, it's going into what are called enterprise agents. Sequoia put out a really seminal report towards the end of last year, Sequoia Capital, the big venture capital company. And they just went through different decades of software. Software in 2010 being a $350 billion market, 2024, $650 billion market, with a $400 billion cloud software market. 2024 and beyond, now they're saying, look, it's a $10 trillion software and services market. Why are they saying that in this report? And they came out with this report when O1 was released by OpenAI, which is called a reasoning model. And they said that because they're like, now we're going to see in 2025, and we're already seeing it, the rise of enterprise agents, AI agents. It'll be a very short period of time before anybody in this room can have a personal AI agent where you can say, hey, I want to go to Greece, 6 months from now, this is who's coming. These are the preferences we have. Here's the budget I have. Go out there and just book it for me and text me anytime the price goes above this so I can approve it. That's just one of many agents you'll have. This all happening right now. But enterprise AI agents, this is a huge opportunity, a $10 trillion opportunity to go after. It's like infinite labor. An enterprise AI agent will literally be infinite labor. There'll be infinite, like hiring an infinite amount of employees for specialized tasks. That's hitting right now. So the very interesting thing to ponder economically is what happens in an economy where AI is kind of disrupting the labor market and the jobs. We need to find new footing to find out what the new jobs of the future will be. I'm actually mostly very positive on AI. Like I'm 95% certain we're going to enter into that age of abundance. But it's a question. It's a question I've really been pondering because, our company, Data.World, we're in the AI space. And we what we do is we power a knowledge graph based data platform. It's data catalog and governance platform that then people can plug in with any AI. And we've embodied in our company to be very focused on automating as much as we can. And we've gone from 48% margins to 74% margins in 2 years. And we are much less employees than we were 2 years ago, with 20 bespoke internal AI tools that allow people to get their job done much more effectively, much quicker. And recorded lots of videos about this to manifest more employee joy because now they're much more creative. Who wants to slog through and like work the field and break their back, et cetera, when you can do it a better way? I'll tell you what I believe at the end in terms of that. So AI, is definitely on the horizon in a big way, including with AI agents. What's next? AI becomes physically embodied with robots. This is Aptronic, which is an Austin-based company. They're one of the really important players in the robotics race. This is a model called Apollo, and I've visited them. We're investors in this company. It's really incredible, like how fast they're they're evolving, and robots now physically embodied AI. That will be an infinite labor machine for creating anything physical. Like, hey, that hill over there, I want you to build a house on it, and the robots go up and build that. And that's going to be very interesting economically in many positive ways. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about when I was on the way here, I got in an Uber Wednesday morning, and the guy driving the Uber is from Chad, and I don't know much about Chad, so I'm using Chat GPT. to ask them questions about it, and we're talking about it. It's 189 out of 191 countries on the poverty index, meaning it's really, really poor. $702 dollars of GDP equivalent per person. It's 12 billion. I don't know what the size of the Austin economy is, but it's probably around right around there. So it's like literally the whole country in Africa. Chad is, probably like a. I mean, I think Texas is around 2 trillion of GDP as a state. It's the second state. California being the first, and New York being the third in terms of GDP. And I was thinking, well, wow, how do you get all this stuff done in Chad? Like, what do you do for like water projects and all of this stuff they can't afford? Well, robots will create a world of abundance even there, like even in a place like Chad, like because these will follow the same cost curve I've seen through my whole life with technology. The costs are high, and then they go down to almost nothing, and that's been the arc. And AI is following that curve. And one thing that I believe open source will win. I'll just call the ball now. That one of the most important books I read back decades ago was In the Beginning Was the Command Line. It's by Neil Stephenson. It's the only book he's written that's a nonfiction work. I gave it away for free online. You can find it very easily. And he basically called the ball and said Linux is going to win the internet. And it did. And I really think that open source, I've just never seen any technology go up such a high functionality curve with a cost decrease at the same time. And we're not even 3 years in. We're not even 2.5 years in. And we're already seeing, models come out of China as well as Meta that are just as powerful. It's incredible. And so this is going to follow a similar curve. It's messier, in physical space. The world is designed for human form. We've got to be careful that the robots don't like step on someone's toes or, you know, knock over stuff or whatever. But this is going to drastically change labor. Like everybody's like kind of joking, oh yeah, it's a good time to like learn how to be a plumber. Yeah. Well, this is the question, right? I mean, it's like one of those times where people are like joking about like, oh, everybody should be a plumber and everybody should be, a carpenter or whatever, like do these physical jobs. Well, yeah, I understand that AI is disrupting cognitive labor, but it's going to disrupt for sure physical labor. It's it's not going to be that long before that happens. We're talking, probably 5 to 10 years for major like robot takeover of almost all physical labor tasks. So what else happened? What else is on the horizon? Quantum computing. Okay, I am super fascinated with quantum physics. I didn't think that would ever come out of my mouth, but it's true. I mean, I've read lots and lots of books on quantum physics in the last 5 months, and this little company called Google announced the Willow chip in December of last year. Okay, the Willow chip is a pioneering quantum computing chip, and they did a benchmark calculation on it that took 5 minutes because it uses qubits, which a qubit is basically instead of a one or a zero, which is what classical computing is and classical science, frankly, is. Um, it can be a one or a zero, or one and a zero, or neither, all at the same time. So in quantum physics, it's basically writing that probability curve, and it requires an observer to then collapse into its state. And so in quantum computing, we've proven that the only way it works is with things like quantum entanglement, which means that across a pretty vast distance, particles can move in synchronicity. Albert Einstein was the one that theorized this was possible and worked out the math. And he's like, I think this is real, but he couldn't prove it. It's been proven now many times over. We know that quantum entanglement is real. We know that 4% of the universe is made out of matter. We don't know what 96% of the universe is made out of. We call it dark energy and dark matter, and we kind of plug the math. But anyways, they do this benchmark calculation on this quantum computer chip called Willow. It takes 5 minutes. On a classical supercomputer, that same calculation would take 10 septillion years. Okay, that's 10 to, and with 25 zeros after it. How old is the universe? 13.8 billion years. That means it's computing at a rate that's over 700 trillion times faster than the age of the universe. Okay, and the head, okay, 700 trillion times faster it's computing than the known age of the universe. Um, and so like, think about that for a moment. And the head of the Google quantum computing division was on stage at TED last year, and he's showing a stable calculation of quantum computers. And he said, the only thing that we can figure out on why this is working is it has to be computing in a different dimension. And he's saying that this is the head of all quantum computing of Google at TED talking about this on stage. He since said that in a 60 Minutes article or video about quantum computing as well. Why should we win quantum computing? Can you guess it? Who are we racing against? That's other country that's also advancing with quantum computing. Why does it matter? There's something called Quantum Supremacy Day coming up, or Q Day. That is projected to be 2029. And that's when quantum computing gets powerful and stable enough that all cryptography in the world that's ever been produced by classical computers breaks. Because the quantum computer can be able to break the NSA's cryptography, any secrets any government has. What will happen as a result? All these cybersecurity systems would be outfitted very quickly. It'll be like the next Y2K, if you guys remember that. Be outfitted very quickly to be like, we got to get these things quantumly beefed up to protect against. Okay, if we're the first country to create that stability, then all of China's secrets, they have no defense. If China's the first, they have all of our secrets, right? So again, fear is driving that. And that's what this 60 Minutes covers. You can find this on YouTube. It's about a year old. You should watch this video. It really explains well what's going on with quantum computers. It's really, really fascinating. Also, this is just 2 days ago. Demis Hassabis, who is the head of all of AI at Google, not just DeepMind. He was the CEO and co-founder of a company called DeepMind, which Google acquired. And DeepMind has come out with many, many innovations post-acquisition. It's like a textbook model of a great acquisition where it kept producing. It's come out with AlphaFold, which has decoded how proteins fold, which proteins are the basis for so many things, all life, and basically, you're talking about the eradication of all diseases in the near future because now we understand protein folding. And Google's already created a division which is going to focus on monetizing all different types of medications coming out of that. And they also have Alpha Chip. They don't talk about that a lot, but that's basically Google DeepMind figuring out how to produce in a very fast pace, AI chips and quantum chips. So that's super interesting. But this he's a real adult in the room. I will say that when he was pressed last year at TED by Chris Anderson, it was really interesting. Chris was like, what is this all for, Demis? Like, what is this all for? And he said, I want to understand the reality of our universe at the Planck scale resolution. So that's what's driving him. Like, so in quantum, you go down to the Planck scale. As Max Planck is the named as a tribute to him. Max Planck, as he really developed all of his quantum science theories, he became much more spiritual because he realized that we were all entangled, that the universe, that consciousness is fundamental. Like, he was quoted as saying that. And so basically it's the smallest scale that we can imagine, like subatomic scale. Like, I mean, you probably know that atoms are 99.99% empty space. This table, everything, it's made out of an atom. That's mostly empty space. We are made of atoms, right? But you go even smaller than that, you go into the Planck scale. And so he wants to understand like the nature of our reality. That's what's driving him. And I want to understand that too. I mean, that's it's an exciting thing to drive someone. I write about this a lot at Data.World, and some of the pieces. This is written really channeling my son, where he calls this the age of a billion dreams. I was on podcast early on with the moratorium call in March of 2023 saying I think it's ridiculous. Humanity has always been destined to create great things with technology. And it would be like in the tribal days, one tribe having fire and the other tribe being like, no, you can't have fire. Like, and now we see, I mean, Elon Musk and others that signed that, they all have their own AI models now. So what was that really all about? But I think what I was saying in the podcast back then is I really think that we're going to have billions of new startups because the barrier to creativity is just being shattered, right? We're going to enter a new renaissance age where each individual company will be smaller because they'll be using AI agents, robots, um, but your ability to dream up like a personalized service or personalized product that we've never even thought of is going to be manifested. And so I'm very positive on that. But I've also been really deep diving on this consciousness winter that we've been in. We've been in a lot of AI winters. Now we're coming out of that. It's we're living in a really interesting time with that. But we're also coming out of a consciousness winter. There's a lot of people now talking about meditation, mindfulness, psychedelics, like all different types of awakenings to consciousness. And I think that's really exciting. And then, I wrote this piece with a good friend of mine, Byron Reese, where I said, look, I do not believe we live in a simulation. And one of the things I wrote in that piece is that if you believe we're in a simulation, then why did who created that simulation? Then why do they believe they're not living in a simulation? So you get to a point real quickly where it's simulation or turtles all the way down and simulations all the way up. And so it can lead you in a very kind of nihilistic worldview. Like none of this matters. Like it's just a simulation, and people are NPCs, and I just don't believe that. I believe in the divine. So I write about this a lot. You can find me on Medium or find me on LinkedIn on that front. I set my intentionality, as I said, at the end of last year. Um, I always write a New Year's letter. I'd really encourage you to do this if you don't do it. I do this in lieu of sending holiday cards. And it really allows me to go deep on all the things that year for every family member. And I always close it out with what my intentionality is for the year. And for me, the theme for this year is all about what makes us most human. Like what is the inner journey all about? And I recommended quite a few things there. And I closed it out. I'm Jewish. I closed it out at the oldest synagogue in India. It's founded in 1568, still running. And India now is the largest country in the world. 1.46 billion people in one country. Um, so, how did that journey then start to manifest? Well, I got introduced to this book. Like someone said, you really should read Proof of Heaven. Has any actually raise your hand if you've read Proof of Heaven? Okay, this is a book you really should read. It's extremely popular book. That's why I asked for raising of hands. You'll thank me for this one. Evan Alexander is a neurosurgeon, Harvard trained. Actually, I asked Ellen about this book, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to read that book." So Ellen's going to read this book. What's that? Oh, cool. Okay, very cool. I hopefully I remember that, but afterwards, yeah, if you can text me. So this is a beautiful story about a neurosurgeon who basically kind of just stops believing in God, and he's seeing his patients dying. Obviously, not all of them would be a very good neurosurgeon, but some of them dying, and some of them are saying like, "Hey, I just saw like heaven," and he's like, when they come back, and more of these are happening because we're able to bring people back. Um, and he's just like, "Oh, they're hallucinating." I mean, seriously, like, and then he comes down with E. coli meningitis, which usually like babies get. Like it's very, very unusual for an adult to get it. And E. coli eats you from the inside. And this is like the worst form of meningitis you could get. And he goes into a coma. Right before he goes into a coma, he shouts out at the top of his lungs, he's like, please, God, save me. And he goes into the coma. And the whole time he's getting a tour of heaven by an angel. And he comes back and has a completely full recovery. By the way, the success rate of what if you're going to survive is 2%. And if you survive, your brain is going to be already eaten by E. coli. He has a complete and total recovery. Nobody understands it. I'll tell you a story about my mom real quick. And Barrett, you were the one that really made me think of telling this story. When my company, Bizarre Voice, had gone public, stock traded up and we could do a secondary IPO. My mom had lung cancer, never smoked, and it had gone stage 4. She's at the hospital. I had to go into the office to meet with these bankers to do the secondary IPO. Stakes are really high. We're going to raise a lot of money for the company. I'm driving back to the hospital. My wife calls me. She's like, Brett, your mom's passing away. And I just was absolutely wrecked. She's like, I'm going to put you on the phone. So I'm saying my goodbyes, and tears streaming down my face, and I'm just like, wow, I just lost my mom, and I wasn't even there for her. I wasn't even there in this moment. And I got a call back 5 minutes later, and Deborah said, it's a miracle she's back alive. The doctors don't understand this. Like the doctors do not know how this is even possible. I get there, I hold her hand, my sister, my wife of now 29 years, truly married my soulmate, and my niece, and we're all holding her hand while she passes away. And that's how much my mom loved me, is that she had to wait, literally come back to life to be there with me. And the doctors in the room, they said, well, if you don't believe in God, you should believe in God now, because we've never seen that. And so I would encourage you to read this. And his second book, The Map of Heaven, is really mistitled. It makes you think it's like going to give you like a map, right? Like drive around, like. But the second book is really good because his first book was so popular that the second book talks about a lot of. It actually talks a lot about quantum physics and a lot about ancient spiritual teaching and new scientific discoveries. And that all it leads into this documentary. Does anybody here watch Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds? I think you'll thank me for this one too. This is online completely for free on YouTube. It's really, really good. It talks about how basically everything is vibration. And you talked about that a bit, Cheryl. And it's an amazing film which goes into ancient spiritual texts, the Kabbalah, Hinduism, Buddhism, brings it up to speed with what we've discovered now with quantum physics, and really blends it all together in this beautiful way. Like this is an amazing. I watched this in Kerala, in India, closing out the year, and it's 2 hours long. It took me 6 hours because I kept on stopping it and saying, "Oh my gosh, that's it! Oh my gosh, that's it!" I was so struck by this. Um, this journey also took me to the discovery of a podcast by this guy, Mark Gober. And this podcast called Where's My Mind? And basically, his thesis in this podcast is that our brains receive consciousness versus manifest it. Now, if you have a damaged brain, you're going to receive consciousness differently. Um, but this is a fantastic book, or podcast, really well produced. Came out in 2018. It's kind of a little bit too early for its time because things are moving very fast. We're having much more of a consciousness awakening now. But this guy, you'd really relate to him. He was, near top of his class at Princeton, captain of the tennis team, got the top Wall Street job, got a top Silicon Valley job, was 31 years old, and like none of this matters. I mean, it's just like we're just on this random rock. There's no meaning really to anything other than the meaning we make up. And like, why is any of this matter at all? And so he kind of went into this depression, and he started listening to health podcasts, and he came across this concept. And given he was a quant guy, research guy, Wall Street type guy, he's like, all right, I'm just going to dive into this. And the more he dove in, the more he's like, I actually think that might be right, that our brains receive consciousness versus manifest. And it was interesting to see the number of hands, because again, if you're a materialist, it's just nothing to see here. You know, consciousness popped out of matter. We'll eventually figure out the configuration to do that in machines, right? Um, so this book, An Into Upside Down Thinking, is the book that came out actually before the podcast. I didn't know that when I first listened to the podcast, and then I read the book. Really, really fantastic, very interesting. Evan Alexander, right up top, right? Will make the Copernican revolution seem relatively minor by comparison. It's a great book. I actually invited him to Austin again. That's how Sam first saw me give this talk. And he's a very good speaker, and he's written now 7 books. His second book, On an End to Upside Down Living, like how do you live in this way, is really beautiful. Like goes into all different types of practices, and just what is life all about now if consciousness is something we receive. This has become super popular. I talked about this a bit in my end of year letter. The telepathy tapes. This actually became more popular in Joe Rogan's podcast. This is a study by a woman named Kai Dickens, who was self-proclaimed not woo-woo at all, who basically, got these reports. She was looking for an next project. Took her about a year and a half, like figure out what she's going to do, what's going to come to her, and ultimately she decides to do this because she keeps on hearing about these autistic non-speakers that have telepathic communication either with their mom or a teacher, and she's like, that just can't be right. That's just like total, made up. And so she goes deep with it, and does all different types of scientific studies, very controlled Faraday cages, the whole thing, and concludes, hey, this is right. And if consciousness is fundamental, and our brains receive consciousness, then it's not hard to accept this. That there are some telepathic powers that some people have, and maybe all the time our souls are interacting, and we have, hey, that's person staring at me. And there's actually lots of studies on things like that, like where you can accurately predict if someone's staring at you, even though you can't see them. There's lots and lots of studies that have been done on things like that. Buddha at the Gas Pump, I got introduced to. Actually, it was Mark Gober's book that brought me to this one. This has been going since 2009, and it has over 720 episodes. Cheryl, do you listen to this? Buddha at the Gas Pump? Wow. Okay, I'm really surprised. It's Rick Archer, and it's all about stories of people like you. It's that you could pull up at the gas pump and you look next to you, and the person filling up their car could be the most enlightened individual you're ever looking at, but you'd never know. And so it's like everyday stories of people that reached some form of enlightenment, and it's really amazing. It's really profound. Open up your mind a lot. So diving into quantum physics, I dove into this guy Robert Lanza, which talks about how the observer effect, which means we know from quantum science that when matter or when matter is observed, then the probability wave of the quantum wave collapses and it forms into what we would expect. And this has been done in lots of different ways. And materialists try to explain this away and say, well, that's just the instrumentation. It doesn't have to be a conscious observer. But basically, his whole thesis as a quantum physics guy is that the observer effect manifests the reality that we're all experiencing. And it's a really fun read. It actually brought me to read. He's got a series of books, but if you want to dive really deep on quantum physics, this is a good one. It brought me into reading a novel called Observer, which is a fun book about someone who invents a brain device based on this, kind of like a Neuralink type of device, and what happens based on this. It'll make for a good movie one day. But it's Robert Lanza, who's the quantum physicist, and then Nancy, I can't remember her last name, but she's written something like 40 sci-fi books. And so she teamed up with him to write that. It's called Observer. This is a really fun book, The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli, which basically goes into why time itself is actually an illusion that our brains make up, and that really what defines things is events. It's a it's a really good read, and it's actually read by Benedict Cumberbatch if you buy it on Audible, which makes it super fun. It's 4 hours long. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think the universe has been here many times before. I think that what happened has happened before and will happen again. Um, what's that? It's a sphere. Actually, oh man, I just didn't hear what you said. I love that. No, it is. It's a sphere. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what we call it. Yeah, for sure. And all ancient spirituality talks about the oneness, the connectedness, et cetera. What Barrett has seen. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And then just to take you through a couple of others. This is a very new book by Annika Harris. She's married to Sam Harris. And really, this book, the last chapter, is the one that I like the most, where she concludes after her romp that consciousness is fundamental. But it's fun to see how she gets there. Breaking the habit of being yourself. Any Joe Dispenza fans here? Okay, couple. This is all about leveraging quantum reality to manifest what you want. Like if you believe in the observer effect, then there's actually exercises you can do to manifest the reality that you want for yourself and change yourself in the way that you want. Ellen would say about someone like Joe Dispenza, well, if you believe it, then it'll happen. But that's the same thing as quantum physics. So, The Alchemist, great, great book. This book has helped me out a lot. This was recommended to me in Necker by Richard Branson, as well as several other people at the table. I went back to the room. All the soaps and everything were Alchemist. I was like, that's interesting. I read this book on the way back on the plane with John, and the lessons in this book have been manifesting a lot in my life. There's a lot of synchronicity in my life. This is a really interesting book about what happens um, in the afterlife, how we get reincarnated. It's really wild. It's only an hour and a half listen, and it'll really open up your mind. Um, Fantastic book about the only way this woman can be healed is by taking her into deep hypnosis and finding out that she had a trauma in a past life. I mean, what I've come to believe about religion is that there are aspects of each religion I think that are right, but we're all just kind of grasping at consciousness or the universe or the elephant in the dark, or God, as I would call it. Celestine Prophecy. This is a fantastic book. Has 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 anybody read this one? This is all about synchronicity. If you read this book, you will start to see synchronicity in your life. It just happened to me today before this talk about right before Cheryl's talk. Um, this is something. It's a great way to live your life, and it's a great fable that he writes. But then he talks about the most recent edition. He brings it up to 2018. This was written in 1993, but in the afterward he talks about how to actually manifest this. And then this is the book I'm reading right now. I just want to talk about one moment of synchronicity. I've probably gone to TED for I don't know 15 to 18 times. I was actually just encouraging Chelsea that you and I should go. I usually bring Rachel. Um, and this year was the first time that Chris Anderson reached out to me and said, "Hey, I really need your help." And we spent 2 hours um, with me and 14 other what he calls AI experts, basically prepping him for his interview with Sam Altman. This is now live. You can see this. And it's really interesting how Sam actually is triggered multiple times on stage. I was really surprised by that. Um, but that deep dive that I've been doing, it wouldn't have been possible for me to prepare Chris without that deep dive for the moment we're living in. This was the most important interview that happened at TED. It's 47 minutes long. You should really watch it. Compare that to Dimas Hassivas on 60 Minutes 2 days ago. Yeah. Yeah. I heard you were there. Yeah. Right. I was actually like swearing out loud triggered. Yeah. I was just like, this is who's going to take us into this era. And then the last thing I would just say, this is a photo from the James Webb Telescope, which really is just an incredible miracle that we got that working multiple times. Like scientists almost threw in the towel because the funding kept on running over budget, but we got it to unfold origami style in space and send us back images like this, which are called the pillar. This is called the pillar of creation. And I hope that what I've done here is just open your mind to a possibility beyond materialism. And the reason I think this really, really matters is because I believe that we are all part of the divine. I believe there's a reason we're here. I believe the beauty of us celebrating Rick, what Barrett said, that Rick's spirit is here. I really believe that. And I personally do not believe that machines will have that. I do not believe that machines will have the type of self-awareness. I believe that we'll create the most amazing productivity machines in history. And that will take us into an age of humanity where GDP, things like that will be redefined. And I think that we'll become much more spiritual beings as a result, because what are we going to do with all that free time? And I think we're gonna really realize the very nature of our existence and the very nature of the universe. And AI is going to accelerate that discovery. And the answer lies somewhere in quantum. I'm convinced in that. It lies somewhere in we don't know what 96% of the universe is even made out of. We just plug it to make the math work, to bridge it with classical science. So
give it up for Brett Hurt, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Two questions for Brett. Two questions. Anybody?
Yeah. I do apologize for going over. It is the first time I've given that talk. Yes. Yeah, Marcus. Oh, wait, hold on.
Go ahead, Marcus.
The thing. So the question Marcus asked is the hand function for robots. When does that function? I think as well as our hand does, because our hand's pretty magical, like the way it works. I think that it's 5 to 10 years away, because there's a lot of complexity, like where it can do anything a hand can do. I think it's probably 5 to 10 years away. It's everything is accelerated with quantum computing.
We can get two more. Barry from Meta.
Yes. Hi.
Hold on, Barry. Hold on,
Sorry,
Barry. Coming at you.
They're gonna get you to
athlete from within.
Whoa. Oh.
So take AI, run it on a quantum computer, stick it on people's heads in glasses.
Yep.
What do you think the social implications are going to be?
I do think that we have a real choice with humanity. I mean, ultimately, there's no doubt that our destiny has always been to evolve, to make our lives easier, give us the ability to really climb up the Maslow hierarchy, et cetera. I do think that if we have a means of inventing sentience, the answer lies in quantum. But we are already augmented human beings. We have iPhones. I have -6.5 in this eye, -6 in this eye. I'm wearing contacts. If I was born 200 years ago, it would have been a lot worse, because I wouldn't be able to see without my contacts. I can see better in 2020 with them. So I do think that things like Neuralink and technologies like that, where there's a basically a brain to computer connection based on quantum will potentially be the way that we get there. And that is going to be extremely powerful for us, and we won't be able to recognize people 100 years from now. Just like if we went back 100 years or 200 years and we showed them the technology, they would just think we're like magicians. They wouldn't be able to relate to us at all. But yeah, that is. I mean, I'm on this deep dive, and I'd love to know what you're reading. And yeah, I'd love to know what you're reading. I mean, ultimately, my thesis of us having a soul, all being part of the divine, all being, daughters and sons of God, all being part of consciousness, it can take you into that place where you're like, well, it's just a virtual reality, a quantum computing virtual reality game, or it can take you into this really beautiful place of, there's a big grand purpose that we're not even aware of, and that we come back here many times. And I'm a big fan of Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And once we find what it is we're supposed to do in this lifetime, it animates us. I wrote a book on entrepreneurship. I quote from that book a lot. But ultimately, that bridge is going to be we've got to be very careful with that bridge, let's say. That's the one thing that freaks me out, actually. You put your finger on the one thing that freaks me out.
Last question, David, and then I have several housekeeping issues, and then we can get out of here. We have a big night ahead. But David, real quick.
Just a second ago, you were actually channeling my question. You talked about 100 years ago, how people were 100 years in the future.
Yeah.
We're unrecognizable today.
That's right.
Compared to 100 years ago. And yet the brain is still the same.
Yeah.
It hasn't physically changed dramatically.
It actually has changed a lot. We are built for speed from an evolutionary perspective. It's changed a lot over several 100,000 years, where a lot of animals are not built for evolutionary speed. But we are built for massive evolutionary speed. So I would actually argue it has changed, and it is changing. And, if you look at something like the telepathy tapes, I mean, the last episode of that on what message the children have for us is really profound. And so I actually think right now I think we're always evolving, but I think we're in an evolutionary cycle right now. And technology, of course, is part of that. We're always augmented. I mean, any glasses, et cetera, people are wearing, we're augmented today.
One more time, Brett Hurt.
Yep.